Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Before the Snap series. My name is Jake Ray, and I'm the Youth and Education Manager here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio, the most inspiring place on earth. This Before the Snap series is dedicated to gaining a greater insight for students and adults of all levels about all the great careers in and around the NFL. And today, we are lucky to be joined by Jason Romano. Jason is the current host of the Sports Spectrum podcast and the author of two books, Live to Forgive, and his latest, The Uniform of Leadership, that was just released on July 28th, which was a special date for me because that's my birthday. So it was a really great surprise, great release date for me. Also, book is an Amazon bestseller. Jason spent 17 years producing, creating content for shows like Sports Center, Mike and Mike in the Morning, Monday Night Football, First Take. You might have heard of those shows on ESPN. Before we turn things over to Jason, just a little bit here about us at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Our mission here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame is to honor the heroes of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence everywhere. And those values we promote are values of commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and excellence. All play a major role, not only in the game and in the X's and O's of the game of football, but they play a huge role in your life as well. And all the lessons that those values teach you on the field, you can use them in your life off the field. So I'm excited today to see how those values play a role in our discussion, how they make Mr. Romano a better podcast host, a better author, and how those values have played a role in his life throughout everything that he has done. Before we get started, just some quick thank yous. First of all, Jason, thank you so much for being a part of this program. And thank you for everything you've done for the game as a whole. We like to say our Hall of Famers here at the Hall of Fame. Without them, the game of football wouldn't be like it is today. But that goes to everybody who's had a fingerprint on the game of football, and you have definitely done that through your work, not only now with Sports Spectrum, but with your past work at ESPN. So thank you so much for everything that you've done for the game of football. Secondly, I'd like to thank our teachers, administrators, all of the educators who allowed us to be a part of your class today. Thank you for allowing us to come into your classroom, teach you a little bit, not only about the values of the game, but the vast majority of careers that are out there in the field of sports. So, lastly, I'd like to thank our students. Without you guys today, without your questions that you're going to have for us on Facebook, this program couldn't take place. So we appreciate you being a part, appreciate you tuning in. And then lastly, if you are watching us on Facebook and you're a student or you're an NFL fan tuning in today, if you have a question, feel free to submit that in the comment section with your name, where you're from, your school, if it's applicable, and then what your question will be. And we'll try our best to get that into the program. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Jason Romano as our next guest of Before the Snap series. So Jason, welcome.
It's great to be here, Jacob. I've always wanted to be a part of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and this is such a cool series that you guys have, and I'm honored to be a part. Thanks for asking me, and it's great to be here with everybody watching in.
Well, we appreciate you being a part of it for sure. So my first question for you, and we'll start it out, we'll throw you a nice little softball. Can you kind of give me a 10,000-foot view on what you currently do and what your day-to-day life is like with the Sports Spectrum and the podcast that you host?
Yeah, so I have the unique ability to work from home. So I work out of my home office here in Connecticut. I left my job at ESPN 3 years ago, 2017. And since then, the content that I create, the work that I do out of my house. And I travel a lot, obviously. Before the pandemic, I was doing a lot more traveling, but I do most of my work from my house, and I am the host. I produce, I edit, I book all the guests, and I handle all the social media, digital media, for this podcast that I host, which is something that I never thought I would do. I know we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but it's something that I'm really honored to be able to do, and that's talk to a lot of athletes, a lot of football players, in the work that I get to do, and ask them about the things that are most important to them. And for many of them, it's not just football, but it's family, it's faith, it's purpose, and bigger things than just being an athlete. The platform that they have as athletes presents them with an opportunity to be able to share some of the things that are really personal and important to them. And so that's what I get to do every day. It's really an honor. As you mentioned, I'm also an author, so I've written 2 books, and those have been done out of the comfort of my house as well. And it's been a real cool journey, especially these last few years.
So it is cool, what our country has gone through and society has gone through with this pandemic has really affected a lot of people and the way that their ability to work in the office. For you, you know, that there's not much of that impact, you know, working from home and working there, you're still able to continually do all the great work that you've been doing. So how have you been able to not so much take advantage, because that's a bad way to put it, but, you know, utilize at the time you've had and the time that others have had to kind of grow your podcast, your audience, your platform, and then, you know, with your book coming out, how are you able to utilize the time that you had for that?
Yeah, I mean, initially, you know, kind of the world's put on hold and you're not sure what's going to happen or where we're going to go or what we're going to do. But I think very quickly with the Sports Spectrum team that I work with, we recognized an opportunity to find sort of the blessing within the curse, right? And we were looking for the opportunity to be able to, like you say, take advantage, which isn't the right wording, but it really is to find something that we can create. I've heard people say, you know, calling it, you know, you're finding your message within the mess. And that's what we tried to do. And, you know, the work that we were doing prior to the pandemic really continued, which is a good thing. You know, we were doing a podcast and we write articles on our website and produce a magazine and create that content for Sports Spectrum. And that continued, thankfully. We did have to, for a lot of my teammates, adjust to working from home and kind of figuring out what that home space looks like. But for me, I was already doing that. So I guess I was kind of one of the few that didn't have to adjust in that realm. But I will say the opportunity to talk to more people than we otherwise would have if the pandemic didn't happen, you know, was something that we really saw as an opportunity to bring people on the show that maybe wouldn't be available if the pandemic didn't happen. And maybe they were out working out or playing sports. I mean, speaking from a baseball perspective or a basketball perspective, you know, those two sports were put on hold when the pandemic first hit. So we were able to call some of the athletes that we were connected to and knew and have them on when otherwise they'd be playing in games and kind of a little bit busier than they normally would be. So we saw an opportunity there. And I will say, you know, and this is not a bragging thing, but I think a lot of people are home or maybe tuning into or listening to podcasts more. But our numbers from June until even just last month in September were the largest that we've ever had. And so we saw an uptick in people tuning in opportunities to interview people and some of the guests that we've been able to have. So that's kind of what I looked at as, you know, kind of taking advantage, if you want to say it like that, of the pandemic. I will say writing a book and releasing a book during a pandemic is probably not what the publishers had in mind when we first signed this deal to do this second book. But at the same time, opportunities to do a Zoom call like I'm doing with you right now and all the people watching, opportunities to connect with people in a way that maybe we weren't thinking about before the pandemic has presented a really unique way for us to be able to get the message across, both from Sports Spectrum as well as from my new book.
So let's flash back a little bit, you know, when you're growing up, as a kid in high school or college, was the path you took and the path you ended up kind of your dream job, or was there something else that you set out to be when you were that high school, college age student?
Ironically enough, the job I'm doing now was exactly what I dreamed about doing when I was 18, interviewing athletes and people in sports. It certainly isn't the avenue that I thought I'd be doing it on. First of all, a podcast. Second of all, you know, covering stories and topics that are much deeper than just me asking an athlete about the touchdown that they scored the day before. But 16-year-old Jason definitely wanted to go into broadcasting. You know, it was pretty quickly, Jacob, that I realized that I'm not going to be a professional athlete. I mean, I think that's what every kid dreams about. And I played sports. I played basketball. I played baseball. My brother was the big football player in our family, Chris, but we all loved all the sports. Football was my favorite sport to watch, continues to be my favorite sport to watch. And I thought, what a unique way and a fun way it would be to kind of pursue a career and get to talk about sports or cover sports for a living. So I went to college with that exact desire and dream in mind, which was to work in broadcasting. And hopefully, eventually, that would be broadcasting in the sports world. But I didn't dream that I'd ever get to ESPN, to be quite honest with you. I mean, my dream job when I was 16 was to be the local sportscaster of the Channel 13 News in Albany, New York, for the 3 minutes that the sportscaster was on the air at 6 o'clock and 11 o'clock. Like, that was my dream as a kid. So I tell people I didn't dream big enough because I didn't think ESPN or the other place I really wanted to work at, which was NFL Films, I didn't think I could ever get to those two places as a kid. So I dreamed probably smaller than I should have. But thankfully, there was these amazing opportunities and doors that opened up, and just really cool, unique experiences that I was able to go through that would take me to ESPN. And ironically, doing work at NFL Films and now being here with you today with the Hall of Fame. So it's been a pretty awesome journey.
I can definitely say so for sure. So when you got to college, what was your major? Because, you talk a lot of people, it's not so common in sports, but you definitely see it that people who go to school and get a degree in a certain major and then, they get a career in a totally different field. Was that the case for you, or did you kind of have that broadcasting mindset, that communication mindset when you went to college?
Yeah, I was probably too naive to think that I could go any further out than the broadcasting world. So when I was in high school, I specifically looked for colleges that had great broadcasting programs. So I started out at a community college in upstate New York outside of Syracuse called Cayuga Community College in Auburn, New York. They had the best 2-year broadcasting program in the state of New York. So I went there, and by day 2 at college, I was still 17. I hadn't turned 18 for another month. But day 2 of college, I was broadcasting on the radio station at college. So your hands-on was hands-on. Now, by the way, 17-year-old Jason, I hope those tapes are burned and destroyed. I don't want to go back and listen to any of those tapes, but it was great experience. And, I was broadcasting play-by-play and color for the local high school teams in Auburn, New York, our college basketball team doing games, and, doing it terribly, by the way, as an 18-year-old, but getting that experience to realize that this was what I wanted to do. And so after I graduated from community college, I went back to school about a year or two later and found a 4-year school, again, in the state of New York, that had a great broadcasting program. And that took me to SUNY New Paltz, State University of New York at New Paltz, which is an hour north of New York City, and went there specifically for broadcasting. So you asked me what I majored in. When I was in the community college, it was telecommunications, radio, TV, broadcasting. That was the major. When I was at New Paltz, my 4-year school, it was communications. It was like a bachelor's in communications, and then comm media was the sort of major, which is communications media. So I knew I was going to be in that media world. And I took a lot of classes on, public relations, on communication, on radio and TV announcing, writing. I wish I had taken more writing classes. When I think about it, looking back, I wish I had taken more English classes, but I hated English as a kid. But that was something that, just the focus was super, I guess, inclined to be broadcasting. Like, that's what I wanted to do. When I graduated college, I was going to get a job in radio or television, and that's where I wanted to go. And, that's always hard too, and we can talk about that in a minute, but that's where I was focused, like super focused on broadcasting. And so when I went to college, both at colleges in the 4 years that I spent, my desire and my dream was to get as much experience as possible so that I could graduate school and potentially get a job and make a career in this business. Thankfully, I've been able to do that.
Yeah, a lot of people have those crazy stories about how it took them so long, and there are some stories like yours where you get into the major you want, you get the job you want, and your path is set off right in that direction that you think of. So when we have students that are tuned in today from high school, college, above and beyond, but for someone in high school who might not know exactly what they want to do yet, or what career field they want to get into, what would be a piece of advice that you would give to those high school students right now who are in that scenario? And how do they find that one thing that they like or love to do?
Well, here's the thing. I think you got to start with your passion. What are you passionate about? When I was a little kid, 5, 6 years old, my passion became sports, and that carried with me still to this day. It's one of my passions. It's not my only passion now. But when I was a kid, that was pretty much my only passion was sports. If you met anyone who knew me when I was 10 years old, they would tell you Jason was the sports guy. And so for me, I found my passion. But then you have to find what you're good at. See, because there's what I call the sweet spot, right? Which is the intersection of what you're good at and what you're passionate about. And if you can get somewhere in that sweet spot of talent and passion, now you've found somewhere where you can really thrive. And in high school, you're not quite sure what you're good at yet. So my advice is to just try a bunch of things that fall in line with your passion. Because I think too many people, and I know for me included, when I graduated my community college, after community college, I was 19 years old, super young, wasn't ready to go on to my four-year school. And so I took a couple years off, and I ended up working at a hospital and working at Toys R Us of all places, and that's fine. It was a job, and I was able to get my own apartment, but I wasn't really passionate about the work. I was just doing it for a paycheck. Thankfully, at 21 years old, I realized I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. So I went back to college, finished my four-year degree, and then was super, like I said, uber focused on getting a career in broadcasting and doing whatever it took. But I had to figure out what I was good at. And I think in college, I figured out that I was pretty good at producing. I was also hosting. And like I said, those tapes are not so great when you go back and listen, but I could produce. I got the idea of how a show worked and putting it together. And that was sort of the thing that I was good at. And it aligned with my passion. And so that's where I ended up going in local radio first for a couple years, and then to ESPN for 17 years as a producer and really honing my skills. So my advice to high schoolers is really find what you're good at and just try a bunch of different things. Stay in that area that you're passionate, and you may be passionate about 2 or 3 things, but stay in those areas that you're passionate about, because that way you'll always be doing something that you love or be in somewhere in a field that you love. Now, again, I know that's not easy for a lot of people, and people who've worked 30, 40, 50 years, maybe in jobs that they're not necessarily passionate about, but they've paid the bills and they've taken care of their family. Total respect there. Totally understand that. But when you're 16, 17, 18, you can try things out and make these choices now. And then if it doesn't work out, you're still young and you can figure out things going forward. But look to what you're passionate about, and then try a bunch of different things and see what you're good at. Because you might say, I want to be a broadcaster. My high school yearbook says I wanted to be the greatest broadcaster that ever lived. I think I said I wanted to be the next Howard Cosell. That's how old I am. And it didn't happen that way. Now I am broadcasting, and that's cool, and I'm doing something that I really truly love. But when I got to college and then out of college, I realized I wasn't so good on the air. But I did have the talent behind the scenes as a producer, and that's what got my career going and kept my career going for many years. So try a bunch of different things, see what you're good at, seek the advice, the wise counsel of people that are in the jobs that you want to have. I know we may be jumping into a couple more questions that you might have, Jacob, but seek wise counsel, talk to the people who are in positions that they're doing jobs that you love, and just keep going at it. Like, don't give up, man. If you're passionate about something, don't worry about the money and all that other stuff. That'll all come eventually. Just chase after the dream. Really do that.
Yeah, and then you joke, but that leads right into my next question is, you talk to those people who are in that, and when you get to college, especially with a sport degree, whether it's management, business, administration, whatever it might be, networking is such a huge component of setting yourself up for success down the road. So for all those college students who are tuned in today, how would you echo that and how important it is to get yourself out there and connect with individuals like yourself or me or any of our staff here at the Hall of Fame? How important is it to get out there and network?
I think it's the most important thing you can do. Certainly experience is important, and people say, how can I get experience when I haven't been able to get the job or whatever, but networking it's vital in my opinion. It really is, because, and it's sort of a buzzword. You hear this on every level, whether you're in high school, college, or even like where I am, 25 years removed from college, you still hear people say it's all about networking. And it is relationships. And that's actually the word that I would use rather than networking. Relationships. Build relationships with people. I wish that I was 16, 17, 18 in this day and age, because of the connection that we have with so many different people that we've never met through social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, like we're doing now. All of these different social digital connections that didn't exist when I was 17. And now you can find the people that are doing work in the field that you like, or you can even become connected with people that you're fans of in the sports world. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. And they might even reply back. Not all of them will, but start slowly, find 1 or 2. You don't ever want to be feeling like you're the guy that's consistently asking for something. So my huge piece of advice in the networking world is to never ask for like a specific job or opportunity. Simply ask them for their time and just say, do you have 5 minutes, 10 minutes that I can just ask you a few questions, learn from you, get a piece of advice from you? Do you have that? Most people will say yes to that. And then through that, you start a relationship, and it may grow to a bigger relationship. And if it doesn't, well, then you try again with the next person. But that's really how networking works. And the biggest thing is not to consistently ask for something like, do you have a job? Do you have an opportunity? Do you have a way of me making money? Do you have a way of me doing this? Don't ask for any of that. That'll all come. Just start with learning, being a sponge and asking questions.
I think that's definitely a huge part because, like you said, those are the individuals that stand out to you. Those messages are, hey, let me take just 10 minutes of your time, shoot some questions back and forth, to better set, myself, not me, but better set myself up,
Yep.
for life down the road. And that continues all the way up into, like you said, when you're 20, 30 years into your career, that doesn't just go away. That continues to be a huge part of your career, of any career that you might have, especially in the sports field. So we talk about those people who are 20, 30 years into their career and, are well-seasoned veterans in what they do. You've mentioned you spent 17 years at ESPN. You've done Sports Spectrum now for a handful of years. How do you, Jason Romano, continue to learn and continue to help make yourself the best podcast host, the best author, best producer that you can be on a day-to-day basis?
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, if we ever come to a point where we think we've made it, quote unquote, which people might say, look at Jason, he's done 17 years at ESPN, or he's hosting his own show and has millions of downloads, you've made it. And it's like, no, you have no idea how much work I still have to do. And I think with a mindset of learning, that's how it's going to set you in the right path, I would say, going forward. And for me, I'm consistently listening to podcasts, not anything like mine necessarily, but just podcasts where people are either talking to each other, interviewing a guest, because I want to be a better interviewer. So I try to find who I think are the best interviewers, and I go listen to them. And sometimes I'm interested in the show. Sometimes I'm not as much, but I'm really not just listening to the show to learn from what the guest might say, but to learn how to interview better, how to listen better. Listening is a huge skill that is very difficult for so many of us, whether we're distracted by our phones or just thinking about our own world. It's hard. And so I want to be a better listener. So I really try to do that. I think, I read a ton of books, obviously, and that's not necessarily helping me become a better podcast host per se, but it broadens my horizons. It keeps me reading and thinking. I read a lot of leadership books, but I also read some fiction. I read a lot of sports books, obviously. But I also read books that are of different genres that you probably wouldn't think about. And in those worlds, I'm really just trying to learn. I read a lot of faith-based books because that's an important part of my life. So I'm really just kind of broadening the perspective on what I read and listen to. And so podcasting, reading, and again, the networking allows you to learn from different people that are in the business. And the beauty is I get to interview people for my job on my show. So I'm learning from someone every single time I hit record, like we're doing right now. And I'll just ask a question. And a lot of times I'm not just asking a question for our audience. I'm asking it because I just genuinely want to learn from them and listen. And I'm very fortunate to be able to do that where a lot of people might not be.
Absolutely. I can echo that 1,000%, especially this program, kind of seeing, how everybody got to their career and where they are. Not only is it for all those students out there who we have tuned in, but, for me as well, because it does teach a little bit about, because I'm still relatively, early in my career, and it teaches a lot about, those next steps as well. So, we've talked about what you do now at Sports Spectrum and your day-to-day basis, but like we've mentioned a few times now, you did spend a good chunk of your career at ESPN. When you hear ESPN, that buzzword, everybody kind of perks up a little bit. So can you talk to us a little bit about what you did in your 17 years at ESPN and some of the things you handled when you're at your time there?
Sure. So my primary job at ESPN, it was 3 different roles that I had. I was there 17 years. The first 3.5 years, I was a radio producer. So that meant ESPN, has a radio network and shows, legendary shows that have been on there like Mike and Mike, like, the Dan Patrick Show originated on ESPN Radio. Colin Cowherd's show, which is on Fox now, originated on ESPN Radio. And so we got to work with these national radio shows, and I was a producer producing a few of those shows. I worked on Mike and Mike initially in my first stint at ESPN as a producer on their show, helping secure guests, booking talent. Then I produced a night show there for 3 years called Game Night on ESPN Radio, and that was a lot of fun. But then I moved to the television side. And so for 9 years at ESPN, I was on the TV side working on the shows that if you're a television consumer, like you mentioned, Sports Center, NFL Live, Monday Night Football. I worked on some of the baseball programming. I worked on a show called Outside the Lines, which is still around, and a popular show that deals with sports sort of away from the field. So I got to work on all of those shows. I was mostly a talent producer. Talent booker was my title. So I would be the one that would, or one of 4 or 5 of us that would secure guests, that would put them on ESPN shows, and whether it was a phone interview, whether it was, a satellite interview. Now they can do Skype and Zoom and things like that as well. But often we would bring guests to Bristol, to ESPN, and have them come on campus and do a bunch of interviews in person. We call that the ESPN car wash. And so we would do that as well. And that was for about 9 years. And then my last 4 or 5 years, this new thing called social media started to take shape in 2010, 2011. And in 2012, an opportunity was presented to me to sort of start the NFL social media at ESPN. And again, we'll go into this maybe in a little bit, but football is my favorite sport. There's just no doubt. Watching it, playing it, studying it, I'm a football junkie. And so the opportunity to build up the social and digital platforms at ESPN on the NFL was just super exciting to me. And so I started the first Twitter handle that ESPN had for an NFL, platform, ESPN NFL on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. I started that Twitter page. And then for the next 4 or 5 seasons from 2012 to 2015, kind of built it up, managed it, and worked on the NFL project every day. And it was great, had a great time. And then my last year at ESPN, full year in 2016 into 2017, I saw an opportunity to go back and work on Mike and Mike in the Morning. And I went back and worked on that show and did their social media and their digital media with that show my last year. And that was a ton of fun as well. I got to travel and experience a lot of unique events, we'll say, with Mike and Mike. And then in 2017, that's when I took the leap of faith, if you will, and left ESPN to do what I'm doing now.
Probably a lot of early mornings there with Mike and Mike for sure. But like you said, probably a lot of really cool experiences. And you mentioned one that I kind of want to dive in. You mentioned Monday Night Football. Yeah. Such a popular, one of the second longest running primetime TV show, the longest one that deals with sports for sure. Yeah. And we at the Hall of Fame, not only do we preserve the history of all these great Hall of Famers, these great gold jackets and football legends, we have a quote unquote pop culture section here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So since you mentioned Monday Night Football, I want to send it out live in our museum right now to Nathan Martin, who's a youth and education coordinator here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, who's in front of one of our displays that deals with exactly that, Monday Night Football. So Nathan, you there?
Yeah, Jake, I'm out here, and like you said, I'm in the second floor of our rotunda that focuses on just decade by decade the story of pro football. Up here, it's by maybe record breakers or fantastic finishes, and I'm in front of the pop culture exhibit. And we think of football today as America's game, and that's because it's so beloved by so many different people. We see football in things like video games. We see football on TV, in something like Monday Night Football. And I want to talk a little bit about Monday Night Football because on September 21st, 1970, the Cleveland Browns would defeat Broadway Joe Namath and the New York Jets by the final score of 31-21 in the first ever Monday Night Football game. This proved to be monumental because it was the start of what we have grown accustomed to today. Primetime NFL games every single week. Monday Night Football, as you said, is actually the second longest primetime show in television history. And since we're in this part of the museum that focuses on pop culture, focuses on Monday Night Football, we've got a question for you, Jason. I know you mentioned in your high school yearbook you wanted to be the next Howard Cosell, and we had that football there signed by Mr. Cosell. He was a part of the booth that called those Monday Night Football games when it all started. So what did it mean to you, and what was it like being one of the producers for Monday Night Football while you were at ESPN?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm just smiling looking at that, at that background there, because that's, again, I'm a football junkie. And so I wish I was there hanging out with you guys right now in Canton. But Monday Night Football was such a unique experience. And I want to make sure I preface this by, if somebody's watching from ESPN, they're like, well, he wasn't producing Monday Night Football. I wasn't the one who was line producing and saying, hey, show that shot on the Monday Night Football game. I was one of the many people behind the scenes who were working on, like I said, social media, digital media, different projects. But are you kidding? For me to get to watch Monday Night Football, to be paid for it, and to be a part of a program like that, I mean, that's what we all dream about in a lot of ways. When I said earlier about being in sports as a kid, and to be a part of Monday Night Football. And I remember, I mostly work out of the studio in Bristol, and one of my colleagues would go to the Monday Night Football games, but just coordinating with everything that goes on to put on a broadcast on a national level for 3-4 hours every week. So much goes into making sure that Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football or Thursday Night Football or any of the games that you watch on TV, there's so much that goes on behind the scenes to make sure that those 3 hours that you see are just that, the 3 hours broadcasting a game, enjoying the game, listening to the broadcasters. But yeah, I mean, come on, it's Monday Night Football. It's the icon. It's something that, for me to say that I could work on a show like that, I mean, that's why when you introduced me and said, hey, he's worked on a show called Monday Night Football. Like, I put that on there specifically because I had this amazing opportunity to do that, and it was a treat. There's no doubt.
So we talked about Monday Night Football and all the other shows, Mike and Mike and all that. Do you, and might be the hardest question we ask all day, is there if you had to pick your favorite moment from your time at ESPN, is there one that stands out to you above the others?
Favorite moment. So I'll give you two real quick. The first one was probably my last day, as weird as that sounds, because that's a sad day as well. But Mike and Mike in the morning, in the last 2 minutes of their show, and remember, at that time, I'm just a producer behind the scenes, like a bunch of us are, so we don't get a lot of FaceTime or airtime. But Mike and Mike stopped their show basically with about 2 minutes left before they had to go to commercial at the end, and turned the camera and focused it on me and spoke about me for 90 seconds and just thanked me for my time and wished me my best and wished me the best in my future endeavor and working at Sports Spectrum. And they didn't have to do that. So for them to do that, that was a really awesome, unique moment that people got to see, not just myself, because it was on their show and heard on their radio show and seen on the TV. And I had a lot of people text me and were see, hey, Romano, you're on TV. And so that was a pretty neat thing. There's no doubt. But I would say my favorite moment was probably, meeting some of my heroes. One of them comes to mind. This is baseball, but a guy named Darryl Strawberry was my Mets hero as a kid. And meeting Emmitt Smith, who was one of my heroes from the Dallas Cowboys. I'm a big Dallas Cowboys fan as a kid, and getting to meet Emmitt. And I tell a story in my book about the day that I met Emmitt and a guy named Trey Wingo from ESPN, who I worked with. He's one of the long-time hosts, and he worked on the NFL for a long time in the draft. Helped make a moment for me to meet and spend 5 minutes with one of my heroes in Emmitt. And that was pretty cool. And I know that was so special because I was literally hyperventilating 5 minutes before I met him and calling my wife and telling her that I don't know if I'm going to make this day, if I'm going to survive, because I'm about to meet Emmitt Smith. And then I met Emmitt, and he was really nice and just super, super cool. And, those are those moments where, yes, it's your job to work at a place like ESPN, but you're still a kid at heart. You're still a fan, and you're still, seeing this guy who you cheered for and bought his jersey and watched every Sunday. And now you get to hang out with him, even if it was for 5 minutes. I got a picture that still sits in my man cave of that day, and I'm just thankful for it. So it's moments like that when I can take myself out of the world of being an employee, which, listen, I still loved working there, but going back to sort of reliving your childhood and the reason that you love sports or love football from when you were 7, 8 years old, And now one of those reasons is standing right in front of you and you get to talk to him for 5 minutes. It's pretty cool.
I know we at the Hall of Fame can definitely echo that same sentiment. You know, it never surprises me to when, you know, somebody just walks through the door and it's like, oh, there's a guy, there's a Hall of Famer just right there. And it's,
Yeah.
you know, part of you gets used to that, but then the other part of you is like, when you, like you said, you step back and step out of that realm and you're like, well, this is one of the greatest guys to ever step on the field. You know, what I love to see here is when, you know, the everyday visitor that's walking through just pick the right day, the right time, the right minute to walk into the building and to see their reactions is definitely a cool part of the job. And like you said, you know, it goes back to the game itself, and you know, a lot of things you learn in the game of football, you know, lead yourself or lead you to help learning things in your everyday life and your career. Here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, we're unapologetically football for sure. So, you know, taking all those life lessons that the game of football teaches, you know, is there one that sticks out to you that not only does the game teach, that helps you become a better athlete, a Hall of Famer on the field, but plays a super important role and help you become a better dad, a better father, a better son, employee, you know, in your life off the field?
Well, first of all, the alignment that has to take place within a football team to accomplish a goal, right? And to go after a dream and go after achievement. Like when you put 53 guys from all different walks and all different realms, it's really a perfect picture of what society could and should look like, is bringing people from all different backgrounds, race, religions, socioeconomic status, whatever it is, and bringing them all together and saying, I want all of you to align yourselves and let's go for it together. Like that is the life lesson in a lot of ways. All you have to do is look at that. It's being a great teammate. You know, you need your teammates in football. You need the guy next to you to do their job, and then you need to do your job for the next guy. I watched Drew Brees come to ESPN one day 10 years ago, and I asked him, because he had to get a workout at ESPN. Imagine Drew Brees throwing footballs while everybody is going out to lunch at the cafeteria at ESPN, and there's Drew Brees working out. And I'm spending this day with Drew Brees, and I said, why are you doing this? And he said, because I have 54 guys counting on me, or 52 guys counting on me to be ready to go when training camp starts in a couple weeks. And so I need to make sure that right now, when I'm getting this workout in and throwing footballs to my agent, that I'm going to be ready. So in 2 weeks, I'm not letting my team down. What a great mindset. I mean, Drew Brees is one of the all-time greats, and he'll be in that building, I'm sure, in a few years after he retires in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But watching him say that from a legend like Brees, who had just won a Super Bowl, and saying, I need to make sure that I'm my best for my teammates. You know, I know there were times at ESPN that I was so focused on me that I lost, you know, the mindset that I was not there for me, that I was there to serve the team around me, and that my success would come by me doing my best to help make them better, and them doing their jobs that would help make me better. We needed each other as teammates at ESPN. I need people in my life to make me better in my real life walk. Just going about every day, whether I'm a husband or a dad, or going out, hanging out with my friends and encouraging them and them encouraging me. We need each other. Community is so important, right? And so when I look at football, that's it. In fact, I've been to many NFL games as a fan and even as a member of the media, and I watch 70,000 people, and I can't wait till we can get back to that when the pandemic's over. 70,000 people all dressed the same, all cheering for the same team, all booing when they got to boo sometimes, but all aligned. Nobody asks, where are you from? Who are you voting for? What religion are you? What background are you? Nothing. We're just there cheering loudly, high-fiving complete strangers in some cases, because we're all aligned for the same thing. And that's a beautiful picture of what I think America and society in general could be, is watching football, or thinking about football players, thinking about the teammates, thinking about the coaches, thinking about all the fans. Like, it's just a beautiful picture of, and a microcosm of how we can be better people. It really is.
Oh, for sure. You know, we echo, like you said, you know, we show a video that's called The Huddle, that's narrated by the great coach Bill Curry, and it explains exactly that it doesn't matter where you come from. If you're one of the best 11 that can get the job done, you're going to be in that huddle to move that ball forward in the game of football. But in the game of life, it's, you know, we're going to be able to get this project done. We're going to become a better family, you know, have better relationships. So like you said, the game of football has so many things, and that's just one of them, of the litany of different lessons that the game teaches. jumping back into, your career here, you've done the producing, you've done the podcast, you took the dive into being an author. Is there, what was the decision behind becoming an author? And was there any, looking back at it now that you've released 2 books, what were some of the highlights of that time getting those 2 books out?
I will say this to start. There's no way, if you ask 16-year-old Jason, and I said, what do I want to do? Writing a book would have been at the very bottom of my things that I wanted to do, because I did not enjoy writing. I still really don't enjoy writing, just to be completely honest. I certainly wouldn't have written on the topics that I wrote on, which were leadership and forgiveness. But sometimes the door opens up to do something that you don't expect. And it's not something that I ever strived for or wanted to do. Certainly writing books. I think if I ever wrote books, it would have been on, the history of pro football, to be quite honest, or, the Dallas Cowboys, or something to do with the sports teams that I rooted for as a kid, or the Super Bowl, which I just love the Super Bowl, and I'm obsessed with the history of the Super Bowl and know so much about it. Those would have been the things that I would have potentially written about. But, writing was not my strong suit. It really wasn't. And so I never really pursued it. And that's why I always say when I go back, I wished I had taken more writing classes, more English classes when I was younger, to help better prepare me for a door that might open that I didn't expect, like writing books. But in 2016, the first opportunity came. And honestly, it came because I was sharing my story. A lot of us have stories to share, whether it's sports related, whether it's life related. And I decided to share my life related story on the relationship with my father. And that opened up a door for people to come up to me and say, you just shared a story that I can relate to. And I think stories are so powerful, right? There's so many wonderful stories in the world of pro football to share. Stories are so powerful. And when we share those stories, we sometimes don't understand that it could help impact or encourage someone else who's going through maybe a difficult time. Through that, somebody heard the story that I shared about my father, and that's where the story or the book idea came from this publisher to write on forgiveness, which is basically the story of me and my dad and forgiving him, which I'll share another time, or people can go get the book.
People can go buy the book, yeah.
There you go, and hear about that story. But just the idea to write a book, it was hard. It's probably the hardest thing I've ever done, to be quite honest. Harder than anything I ever did at ESPN, in all truth, was writing a book. Because you have to go into a place that you normally maybe aren't comfortable going. You have to be vulnerable and open and honest and authentic. But then you also have to write in a way that readers would be interested in reading about. And so thankfully I found a co-author to help me kind of craft those words. We talk about teammates, right? My co-author, Stephen Copeland, is a teammate who's helped me craft these books, the 2 books that I've written, in a way that I think when readers read it, they'll be really encouraged by it. It's one thing for me to tell you a story, Jacob, but it's another thing to put it into words and have people read about it. And it's a different type of content. It's a different type of medium to share. And it was really, really hard. But I'm glad I went through it. And now, by the way, when the second book idea came, I was thinking, I don't want to do this again. This is too hard. But that's the book, actually, the second book on leadership, The Uniform of Leadership, that I wrote, which released a couple months ago on your birthday, you said. Right. That book is more focused on what I probably would have written a book on anyways, which is my experiences in time at ESPN and sharing some of those stories, like the Drew Brees story, to be able to encourage people to become better leaders. And what's it like to be a better leader? Some of the greatest leaders you'll ever come across are people in the world of football. And some of the worst leaders are exposed pretty quickly in the world of sports when they're very selfish. And those leaders that are putting others first and making sure that they're serving, those are the great leaders. And football is such a great microcosm and representation of that. But that's where I kind of wrote the second book. And that book was more enjoyable, I'll say, to write than the first book, but they were both really, really hard.
So we look at all the different 3 aspects of your career, your ESPN, your podcast, your author time. Got a time here just for a couple more questions. And the next one I want to get to here is, what would you say, what would be a piece of advice? What are the secrets to success that you would like to tell to all those who are tuning in, whether they're in high school, college, young professional, 20, 30 years in their career? those secrets to success, that piece of advice that you would have for all those people tuning in today.
3 words. Well, I guess it's 4. It's not about you. That's a weird piece of advice. I'm sure people are thinking, what do you mean it's not about you? For 30 plus years, it was all about me. It was about what I was going after, it was about what I was trying to accomplish, what I was trying to achieve. And then I realized there's something bigger out there that's more fulfilling, more joyful, and more purposeful than anything that I could try to achieve myself. And that's serving others. And that's making it about something bigger than yourself. The great success that I've seen in my life, the great joy that I've seen in my life, the great joy that I've seen others have, the great successes that I've seen others have are when they make it about others. When they go into a mindset of serving, they put their hands out every single day and say, how can I serve you? How can I serve someone else? When they do that, that's when true success, I mean, that's the subtitle in my book, right? Lessons on true success from my ESPN life. The true success it doesn't come from me being able to say, I accomplished this and worked here and got to achieve and made this amount of money or whatever. No, the success came from the people that I spent time with. The success came from watching others shine and do well. And so that it's not about you doesn't mean you take yourself out of the equation. It just means remembering that success is not predicated on achievement or status or title or power. It's predicated on how have you impacted other people's lives. So really the mindset every single day when you wake up is, who can I serve? Who can I love? Who can I care for? Who can I impact? Not just thinking about yourself. And that's really where I've found true success leads to. And I failed at that many, many times. I'm just being honest here. Focused on myself, focused on my own, journey. And that's good. You should have goals and achievement, but don't neglect the people around you and trying to impact those people, serve those people, because that's where the true success, in my opinion, lies from.
That's some good stuff right there for sure. Absolutely good stuff. And if anybody watching, that is what, we want to get across here is there are all these great careers out there and you can, put in the hard work and everything like that. But when like you said, you step back and kind of look at it as a whole, it isn't about you. It's about trying to use that football metaphor again. It's trying to move that ball forward as one big team. Last question here. And then we'll wrap everything up. One of the main focus points today, was networking and how important that is, no matter what level is at, or relationships, as you like to say. So if there was somebody watching today, somebody who might see this down the road, who wanted to get connected with you or reach out to you, what is the best way, to get a hold of you or or somebody in any field that they work in?
Well, I think if you're looking to connect with people in the field outside of here, like not me, but somebody else, like you identified this person or people that you'd like to connect with, start with social media, find them on Twitter or Instagram. Most of the people in this business are on those platforms, but then also go to LinkedIn and, LinkedIn, people look at it as more of a professional site for people who have been in the business, but for high school and college students, I tell those people, get on LinkedIn. It's not going to be TikTok or Snapchat, and it's not going to be that fun app that you're playing around on. But that's where you can network and really look for professionals in the fields that you want to work in and connect with them. So I would start there and reach out. Again, you can send messages and DMs and replies everywhere on social media and get to people. They won't all respond, but keep just, putting it out there, and eventually something's going to stick. I promise you somebody will respond, and that will be the person that you're meant to talk to and respond to. For me, I'm on social media. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to just DM me, whether it's Twitter or Instagram, probably Instagram's best, but you can reach me there. That's a neat place, and I can just connect with you directly. Or my website, jasonromano.com, which is just my name. You can see a little bit about what I've done, but there's a contact us area or, contact me area. And if you click that, that comes directly to me. And so you could send me a message, send me a note, and I will reply. I will respond. I promise you that. And even just to say thank you. But you can reach me in those places, and it's pretty simple. I mean, it's pretty easy to find me. So
especially in today's world. And for everybody watching, if you check out the comment section of the Facebook live stream, that information from Jason is right there. If you want to reach out to him, or if you want to reach out to us here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, you can do that as well. And then all of our information is listed in that comment as well. So, with that, I think we're going to wrap everything up. Before we send you off, just a few quick announcements on my end. For everybody tuning in today, if you're not subscribed, following, liking, anything on social media with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, make sure you do that. We've got so much great content we're sending out, whether it's this program Before the Snap, whether it's our Heart of a Hall of Famer series powered by Extreme Networks. We got 2 great programs coming up with Hall of Famers Dan Deerdorf and Isaac Bruce, so make sure you guys tune into that. If you're a podcast listener, I know you tune in. Make sure you listen to that Sports Spectrum podcast. Our podcast here at the Hall of Fame, The Mission, hosted by my great coworker Jameer Howard. To make sure you subscribe and listen to that. Some of the cool interviews that he has. He just had Doug Williams and Thurman Thomas on and talked to both of them. So make sure you subscribe, like, follow, whatever it is, to stay up to date with all the great stuff we have here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. For our Before the Snap series, make sure you tune in us next Friday, October 9th. We've got Alyssa Hankey, who works with the Minnesota Vikings, who's their youth marketing coordinator. She's going to be with us to talk about her career and everything she has done leading up to her job currently with the Minnesota Vikings. Like I said at the beginning, the game football wouldn't be like it is today without great people like Jason Romano. All their hard work, all their influence on the game. Football isn't just something that takes place on Sundays, Mondays, or Thursdays. It's a 365-a-day job, and people like Jason does such a great job of, where they may not work right directly in the game, they are so connected to the game and getting the messages of all those great individuals who are involved with the game out there. So for myself, our youth education team, Nathan, Jerry, all the way up to our president, and I know he's been a guest of the podcast, Mr. David Baker. Thank you so much for being a part of the program today, Jason. For everybody who tuned in, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope to see you next time here on the Pro Football Hall of Fame's Facebook page for the Before the Snap series. So everybody who tuned in, thank you so much, and we'll see you all guys later.